All right, well, I appreciate the opportunity to have this session. Transportation is getting to be a bigger and hotter topic, I guess you could say, within the industry, in part because we're starting to see packers that receive our cattle are requiring the people that haul their cattle to the packing plants be BQA certified in transportation. They've done that for several years on the swine side, and so they are now going that route, and effective next year, entities delivering fat cattle to packers will have to have a BQA certification in transportation. But years ago, and I don't even remember how long ago, we started doing BQA trainings on stock trailers and transportation. Clyde Lane was one of the great pioneers within our BQA effort that led a lot of the development. And Jerry Yates, and Jerry's here, he's been around today. They did a great job in leading some efforts in stock trailer safety and transportation care. Todd McCartney and I did a lot of work at the ranch and stuff years ago, and did a lot of video there that went to the national level in BQA trailer safety. Todd, I can't remember the exact name of it, but he narrated it. We did I thought, a really good job on some of the stuff we did there, and all of that material is available in the area of transportation. It not only talks about how to inspect a trailer and load capacity and not overloading the trailer and the tires and the springs and all that aspect of it. So those are things that I think have been around a long time that we probably need to dust off again and make sure everybody's aware of those aspects and how to use that in our day-to-day management. There's nothing quite as embarrassing or damning sometimes as to have your trailer break down on the way to the auction market. Anybody ever had that happen? We've all seen somebody, right? Broke down on the side of the road. Well, that's money going out of your pocket every time that happens. That animal sits on the side of the road. That's weight loss and shrink, and not only that, but it can be a welfare issue. There was a situation, I forgot what state it was in now, maybe Georgia, where a guy broke down on the side of the road, and the highway patrolman would not let him offload his cattle onto another trailer, and he had some actually die of heat stress on the trailer. So there's a whole lot of reasons to do this, and we never think about all the important aspects of transportation, particularly on the stock trailer side of it, until we're in a crisis mode. And so we need to really think about that and try to figure out how we can make sure we limit the number of incidents we're going to have. And Clyde Lane's probably done the best job I've ever seen, is actually going in and doing a spotlight on trailer transportation. And so I may mimic some of what he talks about and what we do here, and Curt can weigh in on it too. We both think Clyde does an outstanding job in this deal. So I try to do my best Clyde Lane impersonation in this process, because he's so thorough in what he does. But it's not only stock trailers. If you ship by semi-truck, the reason this has become such a bigger and bigger issue, the stress associated with that transportation can affect meat quality. It can cause blood splash in animals if they're too stressed. It can cause dart cutters at the packing plant level. And if it's causing that much stress that it's actually showing up in the muscle of an animal, that's also stress that if you're doing it at a weaned calf or at the stocker level, that's going to impact the immune system on that calf. So everything we do from the standpoint of trying to reduce the stress on these cattle in transportation helps the immune system. It helps in all the things related to BQA. We had a session earlier on the importance of stockmanship to BQA. Well, transportation and stockmanship and BQA are all interrelated as well. So we'll keep talking about that aspect of it, because it's so critical to the industry we get this right. Loading cattle, there's been some work done out of Hawaii where anybody here from Hawaii? There's some here convention, but they ship a lot of cattle to the United States in sea containers, what they call a cow container. They're in those containers for about 10 days to 2 weeks or something, like 10 days, I think is what it is. Is that right, Curt?
Yeah. 7 days.
7 days, it's shorter. I was got to think that's getting too long. But they had stress monitors on those cattle, and in that process, the only time the cattle actually showed physiological signs of stress is when people were involved in the process. As long as they were in that sea container on a ship coming across the ocean for 7 days, it wasn't a big deal. But when they loaded them and unloaded them, they showed signs of stress. So the people are involved in that. There's a lot of things that stress cattle, and nearly all of them are human induced and human controlled. Everything we get a cow to do, we cause them to do it. How we handle them, how we transport them, all that's it's our responsibility to handle it. And so that's where we get to thinking about, it may not happen but one day a year on your ranch. You may ship every animal you own on one day. How important is shipping day to go off smoothly? And we had a conversation with a gentleman earlier. He used to just be petrified about shipping day. It could go wrong, and that's just money out of your pocket right and left if it goes wrong. But he's gotten his stockmanship and his facilities right, and so it's not a big deal to him. That's where we want everybody to be in this process as well. So if we get to talking about trailers, we'll kind of go through this process, and we've got a trailer over here in the corner, and hopefully we can use the cameras to kind of show that since we're a good ways away from it. But as we look at the trailers and try to talk about how we use those, and this is where first time I did this, I forgot about the component that Clyde started with, and that's the pickup. What are you pulling your trailer with? Is it adequate for the job? And I finally found the best video clip I've ever found, and I troll social media looking for stuff I can use. I'll probably get in trouble for that one of these days. But a guy pulled up to a stoplight with a gooseneck trailer on a 3/4 ton pickup, but the gooseneck was hitched to his bumper. And he was loaded with cattle. And the front of the trailer was dragging down the highway just a little bit. You could hear it scraping on the highway. But that guy thought that was a good way to go, I guess. I don't know. But those things happen. We can't say they don't because there's too many videos floating around of that happening. The good thing about it looked like the floor was pretty good in his trailer. And that may have rubbed off in the front, but he was going along pretty good at that point in time. But have a big enough truck to pull the trailer that you're using. Now here's something else to think about. If you don't haul cattle very often, you may not want to buy the truck that has to do that, but hire somebody that's a professional at it that has the right equipment. You may need you a little emergency trailer to haul something to the vet or whatever, but it doesn't take a big trailer to do that. So there's a lot of things to think about. But if we have at least a 3/4 ton pickup most of the time to pull, most gooseneck trailers are stock trailers. But I tell you, if I had a 1/2 ton, I would want it to be a gooseneck hitch in it. The reason being, a trailer pulls much more stable when it's hitched in the center of the bed of that pickup. You get a 1/2 ton and get one on the bumper, you have a lot of give in that little pickup. And so if I'm going to have a 1/2 ton, I want it to be also be pulling a gooseneck type trailer, maybe a small one, but it'll work. And that's not what we see. Normally the lighter pickup, we go to bumper pulls. But something to think about. All right, as you look at that, as you're going over a trailer, then you really want to start at the hitch of that trailer and make sure that all the hitch components are right, it latches correctly. I don't know how many times I've done it, and I've seen other people do it. They'll let one down on the trailer ball and take off without latching it. Not going to ask how many people are guilty of that. How many people latch the safety chains? I'm very neglectful about that sometimes if I don't think I need to get on the highway and do it because it's a pain to get up there and hook them, but legally you're supposed to hook them. You're supposed to have a breakaway brake system on there where if it comes off the hitch, it will automatically set the electric brakes on your trailer. And it's amazing how many people in agriculture never ever have that hooked up. And most of you don't, and I know you don't because you don't know there's a battery that goes in there. It may have a new battery when you buy it, but it's never replaced in the 50 years you own that trailer. And so that's something to think about. It's got a battery that you have to replace in there periodically to make that system work. You've got a little cable that goes around the hitch, so if it comes off, it pulls down, sets the brakes on the trailer. That's a pretty good feature if your brakes work. How many of you have a stock trailer, the brakes don't work? Have a trailer, the lights don't work. And we get by with it sometimes because we have farm tags and we get leniency because of that. I don't care. I want all the lights on my trailer to work. I want the brakes to work because I don't want to run into somebody and I want somebody to run into me. So it's important that we actually go around, inspect those trailers, and periodically get them fixed. And there's a lot of things that can chew the wires off a trailer. I understand that, but that don't mean we don't need to fix it. So at least have brake lights and turn signals. You may not ever use them, but at least have them where they work. Right on the turn signal, that's something we don't always, what's that clicking noise? Y'all heard that joke? You know, a lot of people don't know what a clicking noise is because the blinker going off. As we look at the trailer then, in the structural integrity of the trailer, the floor is the hitch and the floor is your two critical points, right? You want it to stay on your pickup and you want the floor to stay under your cattle. A lot of our old stock trailers get pretty loose. They get rusted on the bottom. Every bit of a trailer is part of the structural integrity of that trailer. So if the sides start to rust out, that means there's not enough support in that trailer and it could have a buckle point. So those are things you want to think about. I saw a video of a guy with a 36-foot gooseneck trailer going down I-10 in Houston. And at the point in time he showed up on the news, the right side of his trailer had given way and it still had the boards in it, but the whole floor had fallen out and was dragging down the highway. Cattle still standing on it. Their effort to get out of the way was to put ratchet straps around it and jack it up enough they could go on. That's probably not the best idea they ever had either. But there's all sorts of stories and videos of that kind of stuff happening. So make sure your trailers are structurally sound. The next thing is think about is the floorboarding itself. Are the boards good? Are they rusting or rotting on the ends? A lot of people are going to this rubber material that's in this trailer here that's actually will not rot, but you have to have more bracing under it. I've seen some people take some old trailers and put this under it without putting additional bracing, and that's not a good idea either because it can bend and bow. The good thing about this particular trailer floor, it also has some material in it that keeps the animal from slipping. You know, animals slipping, and Curt talks about this a lot, even when you're grouping cattle up and pushing cattle together. If they get to stepping on one another's feet, they're not a whole lot different than me. If you go to stepping on my feet, I'm gonna get stressed. And so if they go to hitting on their coronary bands or whatever in a trailer and losing footing and scraping, that causes stress in that animal and the animals around them. And if you have one of them go down and they don't have room to get up, that's not a good deal either, is it? So loading density is another one we talk about quite a bit. And I'm gonna back up, we'll talk about loading density in a minute. We've talked about the floors, and the other one I see that quite a bit are the tires. How many of you run old reject tires on your trailer? Used to, I'd buy a trailer that had the same tire as my pickup, so when I wore them out of my pickup, I could put them on my trailer. And then they'd go till they blew out, right? I quit doing that several years ago because I got stranded. So I popped too many of them on one trip. And so we've gone to just buying new tires and keeping newer tires on our trailers. And we've basically cut down any downtime in doing that whole process. So that's something we can think about as well, is make sure our tires are appropriate. Now, this is something the DPS tells us all the time, that they could shut down any farmer in Texas, this is their impression anyway, because we overload our trailers based on the rating of the tires we have on the trailer. The trailer may have enough springs, it may have enough axles, but our tires aren't big enough. And most of us don't think about all those. All of them have load ratings, right? And so if you exceed that, somebody could write you a ticket if they wanted to. And so that's something to think about as well. Make sure your tires are as big or bigger than what you'll ever carry in that trailer and rated for that weight. So that's something to always consider as well. We talk about axles. As we look under a trailer, most of us don't look under a trailer until something breaks. But look under there and see how the springs are, if there's any cracks in the leaf springs, or if it's a torsion axle, make sure they're still setting where they're supposed to. There's some maintenance there as well. Those shackle bolts, most of us don't replace those until they break. If you ever pull one out, they're nearly worn through on most old trailers. because that is the pivot point that carries all the weight on that trailer. And on the double axle trailer, all of the weight, that's something we don't ever think about, all of the weight of that trailer is supported on 2 bolts. That center shackle bolt supports all that. There's some springs under there as well that help in the slip joints and all that kind of stuff. But for the most part, the weight is supported on 2 bolts. So we need to make sure that they are in good shape, because if an axle comes loose, that's a bad deal if you've ever had that happen. So make sure all of that checks out. We talk about lug nuts. Most of us don't take the wheel off a trailer until it blows out and we got to put another one on it. But periodically check the lug nuts, make sure that they're not loose, and a way to tell if a lug nut's loose, it'll start to have a little bit of fresh rust around the nut itself. They'll rust because you break the paint off, but if it looks like it's fresh rust after you've taken a trip, there's probably something wrong with the lug or the lug nut, or it's not tight. Okay, something to think about. The other part is greasing wheel bearings. Most of us are pretty neglectful about greasing wheel bearings. It says grease wheel bearings annually. How many grease their wheel bearings annually? Todd's probably the only person I know in the world that would do it religiously. Dean's nodding his head, but I think Todd must have affected him. But that's something we need to do as well, because if those bearings go out, we're done as well. So all of those things have to be done and done in a timely fashion. So it's all maintenance. You know, anybody in here would drive a semi truck, for example. If you're driving a semi, you have to do a pre-route inspection. And if you don't do that and somebody catches you, you're going to get fined in DOT, okay? We need to do the same thing with our truck every time and check all of that out. Just make a quick walk around, make sure everything's working before you take off. And before you load it with cattle. I see so many people that don't know the brakes don't work until they load it with cattle and it doesn't work. But how many of us unload and wait? No, we all ease it on the town, right? And hope to God we don't hit anybody. The other thing to think about on these trailers, we talked about flooring, the sides and the metal integrity, are the gates. If gates won't stay latched and they don't latch easily, they can be dangerous. If cattle are loaded in a trailer and the cut gate comes loose, it can protrude into the other cattle and can cause puncture wounds, bruising. A lot of other things can happen associated with that. Cattle get down because of it, because it allows more pressure to come back to the back of the trailer. The other thing is, when you put cattle on a trailer, you want to be able to latch the gate quickly if you need to, and very easily. So most trailers nowadays are equipped with a slam latch of some kind, so you can push it and it'll latch itself, and then you can do the secondary means of securing it. So if you have that, make sure it's in good working order, lubed up to where it'll work. And if you've got a trailer, and a lot of people will do this regardless, as you're going down the road, take a rope, tie the trailer gates together, at least a rope. Because I have seen those bars in the back and the latches break and the gate nearly come open. But if they had it tied, even with a pigging string, like y'all have got around your neck right there, it'll keep it from coming open. And so do something to secure that as a secondary means. All right. The other part, and we talked about going this loading density and the stress of the cattle. If your cattle are quiet on the trailer, they're less likely to tear things up. And so if we can get them to load on there quiet, stand quiet, and not fight for position on the trailer, it's easier on the trailer, it's easier on the truck, it's easier on your pocketbook. So we're actually going to run these cattle in here, and we'll load them on this trailer and talk about that process. And there's a lot of different ways and setups to load trailers. This particular one, you know, it could be a single file chute like this one, and the trailer backed right up to it and run the cattle on single file. Most of us will load cattle out of an alleyway of some kind, to where we actually have the trailer backed up basically like we do here, and get cattle to jump on it. So either way works, but let's go ahead and do that while we've got them here. And another thing, talking about loading density, make sure if you don't load cattle of different weight classes into the same compartment of a trailer, so don't put cows and calves in the same compartment unless I say just don't do it. Some people will do it, but make sure you're careful about that. And then the other thing is, if you've got bulls and cows you're hauling, try not to put them in the same compartment. Bulls will be bulls, and so you need to try to make sure you don't do that either. But make sure, and there's some really good BQA stickers that you can put on your trailer that based on the width and length of your trailer, it'll actually have what the suggested number of cattle to go on there in different weight classes. You can put that right on the tongue of your trailer. And so and historically what I see people doing, they'll put at least one more animal on a trailer than they should every time. And that creates all that stress, and they're constantly pushing on and the animals don't have enough room to adjust and rearrange themselves in a trailer.
What do you think about the half-top trailers? Do they cattle load easier in them, or?
That's a good question on the half-tops. To me, they actually load a little easier. You got more light going into those. Cattle tend to load easier, in my experience, into open-sided stock trailers versus these aluminum trailers that are three-quarter solid fronted. The more light they have, the more readily they'll go to the front of the trailer. And here's another tip. If you've got a diesel truck, turn it off. I see so many people back up to the chute and they'll leave their truck running, but that vibration coming through the trailer will cause some cattle to balk going onto the trailer sometimes. So if you see a good truck driver, he'll pull up, bump the chute, and shut his truck off. If it's cold, that's hard for one of them to want to do. I understand that. But it actually helps the cattle loading up in the nose of those trailers. Little things like that can make a difference.
I think it's nice to have it as low to the ground probably as you possibly can, a dip or something there.
We haven't talked about loading height, that's a great point, Kurt, because the closer it is to ground level, the better off you're going to be. Because cows are not jumpers. I mean, they will jump, but that's not their natural thing, right? And so they'll actually want to just be able to walk into a trailer or take a small step up into it. The thing to think about is you don't want a big enough gap under there that they can stick a leg under it. If they balk at the back of it and then somebody pushes them forward, they can snap a front leg. Or they can slide a back leg up under it and really cause some injury there as well. So if you're going to do that, you've got to be careful that I've seen some people that'll build a little embankment and butt right up to it or have their trailer back right up over it. But if they can get their foot under there and over the front of that, that's even worse. And so you're better off to have a big gap than a little small gap they might slide up under. But if you can get it to where they can back up to where it's actually a little higher than the trailer or right at the trailer floor, that's ideal. And a dirt floor works better than any other flooring. So if you've got a loading chute and you can fill it, and that's where the old loading chutes all used to be, is filled with dirt. They had solid sides, you'd fill them with dirt. And boy, you could load cattle like crazy out of them. Now we've gone to putting concrete floors and these lumber floors and some other stuff in chutes, and it's different footing, and they're not as comfortable on it as they are on soil.